Welcome to Building Barrels, where we explore the technology, planning, and development of adventure-centered, man-made waves to spread the stoke of surfing. My name is Michael, and I'd like you to join me in learning everything we can about surf park development. Together, we can build barrels in our hometowns. Now, today our guests are from Honokea, and Honokea is a real estate developer and surf park development consultant based out of Hawaii. They helped bring NLand Surf Park, the very first North American surf park, to Austin, Texas, and they are currently developing their own surf park in Hawaii. Honokea can help in most phases of surf park development, from pre-development feasibility studies to construction oversight, all the way to long-term surf park operations. And they do all this while using Hawaiian hospitality. With that, I'd like to introduce to you Keno Knieriem and John Kojima. Thanks for joining us today, guys.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Thanks for having us, Michael.
Can you guys give us a little introduction about yourselves and your involvement with Honokea? And also, we'd like to know how you developed the name Honokea.
Okay, yeah. So again, thanks for having us on your podcast. We're really excited to be here. We're in sunny Honolulu right now, and we got a little bit of surf. We've been working on surf park development for almost 10 years now. We have a group of partners in different facets of the industry, from architecture, the construction management, high-risk CFO operations, which is John, and sort of Hawaiian surf culture experts, namely our president, Brian Kealana, who couldn't be here today. But yeah, our company was founded in 2011 following a video that came out from Waveguard in I think February of that year, with a small wave in northern Spain, utilizing kind of hydrofoil technology. And I was working at the nuclear shipyard here at Pearl Harbor, and my undergraduate degree was in naval architecture from the Naval Academy. So I'd seen the hydrofoil, and that was my specialty engineering wise, was hydrofoil, hydrodynamics, and thought that was genius. And so we kind of started on this adventure that's taken us all around the country, or actually all around the world. But Honokea stands for, it's a name given to us by a cultural leader here in Hawaii, Sig Zane. They're a sort of a sophisticated cultural design team out of the Big Island, out of Hilo. And Honokea stands for literally Bay of Bliss. Hono is bay, and Kea is sort of white or peak. But metaphorically, which is sort of how the Hawaiians use language, it stands for striving to be your best. And we, as a consultant, and I think the customer experience we try to create at projects is a place where people can sort of come together and strive to be their best, be better.
I really like that. And I was mispronouncing it again. So it's Honokea.
Yes. Yeah.
Got it. And John, what's your role? I think Keno said you're a CFO.
Yes, I'm fondly called Uncle John.
Okay.
And that's because one, it's out of respect for elders here in Hawaii, but more importantly, I grew up with my son and Keno were great friends growing up. And so I've known Keno since he was a child, and watched his soccer career and his naval career, and now budding entrepreneurial role. And I was basically, my background is in accounting and finance, and primarily the risk portion that Keno has referred to is that we have a submarine operation here in Hawaii that I was involved with CFO at Atlantis Submarines. And so I'm kind of used to experience in operating attractions in the high risk area, generally speaking. And but I was asked to get involved by helping prepare our business plan and budget for Keno and his team in pitching to Waveguard the opportunity to develop wave pools in the United States and particularly in Hawaii. So we've been at this for a while, and I'm along for the ride and enjoying the ride. And I went with the team in Austin and had a good time in Austin for 9 months developing the park out there. So I'm fully engaged and mostly retired these days, and but involved with the planning and helping people like yourself get wave parks built in their communities.
Awesome. Now I'm curious, like on your website, you guys mention Hawaiian hospitality a couple times. Like, what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, that's a good question. Hawaii, I think there's different, in the hospitality world, in the hotel world, there's a couple different brands of hospitality. And Hawaii, starting in the turn of the century, sort of pioneered, I think, that the earliest idea of a surf resort, where we had, in Waikiki, we had hotels on the ocean with wonderful waves for people to surf. And we had beach boys that would share longboarding and canoe surfing and just basically their love and education of the ocean with visitors. And that sort of aloha spirit has stayed alive and sort of remains as a brand that I think people refer to as Hawaiian hospitality. It's just Hawaii's idea of how to share knowledge and share place with a visitor demographic.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, I really like that. I've been to Hawaii, and I can totally see where you're coming from and mentioning the different the hospitality that you guys have, for sure.
I think Hawaii is a unique place, especially right now with the current climate in America. It's our stance on race and I think acceptance of people is sort of unique, and I think it's a good tool to share in other parts of the world. I mean, Hawaii as a brand, I think, represents that, where we welcome everybody and we are healthy and are smiling and, celebrate culture, not just our culture, but all cultures in a respectful way. And I think, it's a good model for the rest of the world to consider.
Yeah. I think that's what Brian Kealana brings to our team too, is a real true sense of that aloha spirit, and just wanting to share his love of surfing and his family's love of surfing with the greater community, and but mostly in a safe manner too, that they're respectful of the ocean and respectful of the power of the wave and the water. And so I think that makes it unique in terms of our sense that we bring to a development, is that spirit of aloha.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now your website also mentions that Honokea is a real estate development company and not necessarily specifically a surf park developer. I thought this was interesting because I had actually done a podcast on why or how surf park development was actually real estate development. Can you guys go into that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, developing a surf park, for anyone that wants to get into this, is probably real estate development at its most challenging level. I mean, you're talking, the smallest of the technologies is maybe an acre. But anything you do at that scale is a community development and requires engagement with local politics and typically a public process, pretty significant budgets and project management, pretty significant operational requirements by lenders and banks. They're big projects, and I think we call it real estate development because that's the skill set that's required to go from concept to operations.
Yeah, and there's just like so much that goes into it that if you're looking at developing a piece of land commercially, I mean, you have to do all that for a surf park too.
Right.
It's not just a you're a surf park business, you actually have to go in and develop the land. And so it's much more than just the idea of a surf park business.
Right.
Yeah, the wave pool is really just a core piece of the attraction,
Yeah.
and it's all the other facets. It's hospitality, it's lodging, it's retail, it's food and beverage, it's um, education and relaxation. And we're kind of excited about, I don't know if you've read or heard about the Virginia Beach property that's being developed
Yep.
with Pharrell Williams. And that's kind of exactly what we see as the future of wave parks, is that it's going to bring new value to land that's not being used to its best and effective use. So.
Right. Yeah. I'm excited to see how that plays out as well, because my concept is very, very similar. I'm not sure if you've come across my website or not, or my development, but I've founded Groundswell, and we're looking at developing a surf park or a mixed use development, a commercial mixed use development anchored by a surf park, very similar to the Wave Virginia Beach. And so, it's exciting to see that they've actually, gotten a little bit further than I have, but I'm excited to see like where they're going to go with that. So, but yeah, I mean, my concept is very similar with, potentially apartments or condos, with retail and, maybe office space, but all anchored by a surf park and, with club and fitness center and that kind of stuff. So very, very similar.
That's great. Yeah, that's wonderful.
Maybe a little different now that we've got a pivot with COVID
Yeah.
experience with
Yeah.
we're on
And
the same page.
yeah, absolutely. And I spoke with a potential investor and a potential debt broker, and they both expressed, maybe just start with a surf park and see how things play out with everything else before you start like developing the residential and retail, because you never know what the future is going to hold for that. So so like my concept is kind of to develop it into phases, starting out with the most important one, which is the surf park, and then developing different new phases, if it seems plausible, I guess. So, well, so you guys helped with NLand. Are there any other surf park projects that you guys have been involved in? Besides, and then you've got yours, obviously.
Yeah, so we started working with Waveguard in 2011. I think we were actually their first partner, and then 2011, 12, 13, like we were their U.S. representatives. So we were actually helping anyone that wanted to do a surf park in the U.S. with feasibility studies, land planning, government outreach, public outreach. Mostly on the finance side, just helping people to understand how this can be a tool for different types of developments, whether it's a hospitality kind of amenity, a wave pool that could help serve a underutilized hotel or a new build. We've helped with old folks' homes that might use something like this. But yeah, we've probably worked on and helped, over 100 different developers, refine their vision and understand the feasibility behind these technologies. And in that era was just Waveguard, and that was the only technology available. But it's just this sector has grown. There's now we're at some point there'll be a lot more technology providers, but now we're seeing American Wave Machine, Kelly Slater's group, Waveguard has their Cove technology that we happen to really like, and there's different, depending on your development and your goals, there's different technology for different solutions, I would say.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Cool. And you guys were with NLand from the beginning, right? And then I don't know if you guys like helped finish the project, but I know that you guys were in like a really integral part from the very beginning, right?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, we lived in Austin for about 18 months and did the land acquisition and, all of the sort of pre-development work with politicians and community outreach and oversaw. I mean, we did all the conceptual design and got the initial permitting through. And I think around the end of 2014, like around Thanksgiving time, is when we transitioned back to Oahu, back to Hawaii.
Yeah.
And they opened in 2015 as NLand. And they actually ended up taking the development in a little different direction than sort of the direction we were taking it, which was more of a sort of multi-generational attraction versus maybe what people would refer to as a surf park or a surf specific facility. But yeah, they did a great job, and we were proud to see that operate while it did.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure this name is going to bring back some memories, but I spoke to Karen Skelton with Texas Realty Partners. She spoke very highly of you guys, by the way. And she expressed some of the challenges that you guys had with finding the land and making sure it was the right piece of property. What lessons did you guys learn through that process?
Yeah, I think for surf park developers, selecting the piece of land you choose is probably the biggest decision that you'll end up making, and that'll make or break any project. And specific to that project, I mean, we probably looked at 100 sites, ranging from maybe 1.5 million an acre down to 10,000 an acre in price, and then different jurisdictions as far as permitting goes and land use. There were, different access to utilities, different commutes for different demographics, different. So yeah, there's a variety of constraints and opportunities with land, but I think that's definitely one of the most critical decisions in the early stages of planning a project of this size.
Is there anything that a aspiring surf park developer needs to keep in mind when looking for the land? I know like you got to consider like the water table and like where the rock is, like how deep the rock is, I guess, or something like that. Like, what all do you need to like really consider when you're trying to find a site?
Yeah, that's a complicated question, but I think utilities is obviously really important. You need to be able to get access to fill your pool. I mean, before you even start looking at sites, you really got to understand the regulations around the water usage for the surf specific, that surf specific body. And I think a lot of the land use regulations for that jurisdiction, which would include like city, county, and maybe state regulations on different aspects of the development, and the complicated part for the wave pool developers is that every jurisdiction has different rules, let's say for water sanitation, or what works in California in Lemoore doesn't work in San Diego. What works for BSR didn't work for NLand. So I mean, there's a lot of research that goes in up front. I think having a good planner is the technical term, but if you partner with a design firm early that's local, a good planner would be able to help you to navigate that and then assist in your site selection. But yeah, besides utilities, there's you want to know what's under the ground there and what kind of dirt you're dealing with. If it's going to be like for NLand as an example, they had expansive clay. A little south of NLand is the Formula One park, and they actually, to get the tolerances they needed for the track, they had to over excavate like over 10 feet. It might even be more. I sort of forget at this point, but Ranger Excavation did it, and the owner is actually a driver that gets to drive on that track, which is cool. But so the structure to support the foundation of the wave pool becomes a budget risk item. and the cost to excavate. A project that we're working on in Honolulu is in sort of porous basalt, and so you know, there's different costs associated with the excavation of this large sort of man-made lake, if you will. But getting power, I mean, yeah, the utilities are important. I think access, the community that you're going into, you know, and if there's, you know, Hawaii specifically has a lot of anti-development sentiment. And so there's a lot of community relations and brand positioning that are important up front before any kind of public announcement. And, but yeah, I think what you're getting at, site selection, is a very crucial part. John, you have anything else to add to that?
I was just going to say yes, we spent a lot of time with politicians there, local politicians, and the permitting process was, you had to engage the local politicians, and actually did feasibility studies to show to get tax incentive support, and show how the surf park attraction would bring new jobs and new business to the area and tourism. And so I think that was, for me, the biggest challenge was just the time spent involved with acquiring the land, was the permitting process.
Gotcha. And how long did that take from like the time that you said, okay, this site is the one we're going to go with, through permitting and, you know, getting, you know, all the approvals, to, you know, getting the stamp to where you say, okay, let's break ground now. And actually also, how long was your due diligence period before you actually purchased the land? Did you go through a lot of red tape prior to closing on the land first?
So I think on the schedule part, you know, that varies in a place that and is tied to your site selection. So in Hawaii, we have to, you know, you'd have to consider the zoning of the land that you're going after and the use that you want to use. So if it's purely a outdoor recreational amenity, then you could do it in a call it cheaper land. But once you wanted to do commercial, you know, more commercial activity, then maybe you'd have to go through a land use change. And that might take 5 years in Hawaii if you can even get it done. And in, you know, different parts of Texas, you know, anyway, the site selection is totally related to that sort of planning timeline. And if you know, there's land that's typically entitled for your use, and sometimes that's more expensive, but it'll speed up your schedule. And so it depends on your strategic goals, and I think your capital plan. What was the second part of your question?
Yeah, I was wondering, you know, once you, I guess, how long it takes. Yeah.
Yeah. So the due diligence, I think, you know, we've gone through the due diligence process so many times on so many pieces of property that it probably wasn't that long for us, because we'd already looked at maybe 90 properties in Austin with Karen and other commercial brokers, and on our own as well. And so, you know, we had a specific criteria that we were looking for and a specific schedule we had to meet, along with a budget. So when you start to put your project constraints together, then it helps you to hone in on what you're looking for. But maybe similar to buying a house, sometimes you got to get out there and just look at a bunch just to know what you like, what's going to work for you. But yeah, sometimes it does help to have a consultant with that selection process, so it speeds up the due diligence. But I want to say for us, it was probably 6 months.
Oh, really? Okay.
It always takes longer than you anticipate.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I hear.
I was going to say a year, but that's why Karen Skelton's name brought up some great happy memories. I'm curious how you ran across her.
I'm good at connecting dots, I guess, is what,
Wow.
what you can say.
Yeah.
And
her and her husband both were part of the party team. I think it was really good to meet them. she was great help.
Yeah. Awesome. Um, so once you got the site selected and you closed on it, like how long did it take from there before you actually broke ground? Was that the 6 months you referred to, or was that just due diligence?
Yeah, I think that was just due diligence,
Okay.
site selection, figuring out utilities. Yeah, I think our strategy being from Hawaii is that we like to ask permission before we ask for permits. So we like, it's a cultural respect thing that we have here, where you go and ask maybe the elders in the community. You educate them on your project and your intentions and what you're trying to do. And so we did a similar thing in Austin. We actually met with sort of the native cultural leaders to ask them, the business leaders, to say, hey, this is what we're looking to do. Is this something that fits in your town? Because we're not trying to be, I don't think anyone wants to be an invasive species. And I think we feel like, especially being from Hawaii, our president, Brian, his father is a Buffalo Kealana. For them, sharing surfing is a heavy responsibility that, is everything that they stand for. So doing it in the right way, the Hawaiian word is pono. So doing things pono, asking for permission before asking for permits was part of that process. And maybe it takes a little longer, but that's our perspective on the development process.
Yeah. Cool. So once you got permitted and everything, and you guys were actually able to break ground, did you guys learn anything from there until Inland was able to open?
Definitely. I think real estate development, if you meet a older developer, they typically are pretty interesting people. They're interested in society, they're interested in good design, they're interested in business and finance and marketing and construction. There's so many facets to it. So I think, any developer is learning on every single project, maybe from bad stuff, but from good stuff too. Especially projects of this scale, you get to have budgets to work with potentially really great consultants, which we got to do in Austin and our projects here and in Coachella Valley. We've been blessed to work with great people that we get to learn from. And I think that's part of the fun of this industry.
Yeah. Yeah. And you just mentioned Coachella. Are you guys working on that project?
We, after Austin, we started working on a project in Southern California, and we had rights to Waveguard technology there. And we were working with, one of our partners was the old city manager, or the former city manager from like the 90 to 98, and then became the CEO for Saul Price, doing a lot of real estate development. So we ended up meeting with a lot of different cities in the region, and ended up in the Coachella Valley, surprisingly, which for me was not an interesting area on paper. And after we spent some time out there, it was actually, found it very fascinating and loved the culture. And but yeah, I've never been a fan of the desert, maybe just because I haven't spent time out there. But yeah, we came to love it, and we had locked up a couple different sites out there and put a feasibility study together, and then worked with the investment banker out of New York who was specializing in operational real estate, like ski resorts and marinas and water parks. And so we spent, I don't know, maybe a year and a half working on that project. And eventually I think there's now 4 or 5 development, like surf related developments happening out there. So it's not a place that we'll probably put our own capital into, but it's a really amazing community. And we were working with the Rylington Group, which is primarily a residential developer, but just great people. And the community is wonderful. They really care about the residents and have interesting sustainability issues that, is part of our planning. I think representing Hawaiian culture is all about sustainability. That's kind of what allowed surfing to even be invented, was that these these people had so much free time because they thought about the planet first, or their resources first. And so that's, an integral part of our planning and NLand's planning as well.
Sure. In I know that you had mentioned, like, in the inland plan, the plan for inland, that you guys had a multi-generational kind of approach, and then it kind of the concept, I guess, kind of shifted a little bit from there. And with inlands ultimately getting closed down, and Kelly Slater Wave Company coming in and buying out, there's been some speculation that something was wrong with the business model, I guess. What can, does that have to do with the change in concept that you guys had with it? What can aspiring surf park developers learn from inland to make sure that their surf park is a success instead of having to close down and get acquired?
Yeah, I would be speculating to say what caused them to fail specifically. I think what John and I and our team can speak to, I think, is the value of I think authenticity with surfing is extremely important. And so part of what we thought the challenge in Texas was, which, is really far from Hawaii, you're delivering this artificial experience in that it's not the ocean, right? But you also have this supernatural opportunity to really, share surfing in a highly effective way. And we felt like sharing, ensuring that those surfers who learn to surf, hundreds of miles from the ocean, when they do come to our beaches in Hawaii or someone else's beaches, that they understood the etiquette of surfing, the sort of the safety issues related to the ocean that maybe aren't in a wave pool. I think if Brian were here, he would say, his big word maybe is he wanted to teach people that were inland how to be assets at the ocean, so we could train these people. Brian trains Navy SEALs, all of the lifeguards in Hawaii. He's one of the leading experts in water safety globally. And so his idea was, we can take essentially like a karate type program and make black belts out of someone who maybe doesn't even know how to surf. And that was part of the opportunity. And I think part of the authenticity was that we could connect artificial surfing and someone maybe who's learning surfing for the first time to Hawaiian surfing, to sort of the roots of at least our perspective on the sport.
Is that where the multi-generational idea spawned from?
Yeah, I think that's sort of a development trends thing. If you look at developments that are struggling across America, I think single-use attractions, have maybe pre-COVID at least, have a hard time. Golf was a little saturated maybe and having a difficult time. Malls, just simply having retail is hard. So I think having the simple thing is, having something for everyone to do. And I think that's the trend, is that, people are recreating differently than we were 10 years ago.
Yeah. Is that where the y'all's idea of a combination of indigenous and contemporary knowledge, because you guys mentioned that on your website too, and is that how the merging of that?
Yeah, another way we say it is we want to have one foot in the past and one foot in the future so we can be present. And so we got to know where we're coming from, and surfing culturally specific, has a history, and it's like our president, Brian, and I think there's a lot of people out there that are scared of the future of surfing because of surf parks, that we're gonna, similar to maybe the movie North Shore, right? We're going to teach people to surf and they're not going to know how to respect the history of the sport. And so, yeah, I mean, Brian says it differently too. He says this could be the best thing for surfing or the worst thing from surfing. It just it's on the hands of the operators, right? The owners of these places to share the right perspective, and that's something, since Brian's family represents that, I mean, he takes that extremely seriously.
Yeah. Cool.
I want to say that our vision is to create a skill-based attraction versus a thrill-based attraction, and to provide activities that you can improve upon your own physical skills is very important to our vision. And I think it's so important to provide the entire development experience in your planning. I mean, I cringed a little bit when you said you're talking about doing just the surf park first, and then trying to do piecemeal. To me, that's the wrong way of thinking about this thing, because you want to provide a multi-generational experience. You've got to have things to do for the kids, and so while dad's surfing, they're out doing bicycling or stand-up paddling, boarding or skateboarding, or just I think our vision anyway is to provide all these different activities, and that's what you're engaged in, and that's the value that you're paying the ticket price for. To just have surfing, it's only half the puzzle, I guess. And so what do you do after you surf? You get back in your car and you go home. There's nothing for the family to do other than just surfing. So that's be my takeaway from our development experience anyway.
Yeah, no,
we're trying real hard to be a full service facility. It definitely costs more money, but in the long range of thinking in terms of success of your development, I think like Pharrell Williams and Wave Group have it right.
Cool. Yeah, I appreciate your input. And just to clarify, it wasn't necessarily just a surf park. That was just like kind of the first phase would be the surf park, and in a clubhouse with a restaurant and retail and that kind of stuff. And so there'd still be some activity there. It just wouldn't be to the full scale of the vision of Groundswell, which is like very much like the way Virginia Beach, at full scale. But the idea was just to kind of offer it in phases, with the large buildings coming like a little bit later. But there'd still be like I said, the clubhouse, restaurant, and retail, and some other activities, maybe volleyball. So yeah, that's kind of what the idea behind doing it in phases was. But yeah, I'm glad we're talking about my development now, because then we can kind of talk about what you guys can do to help an aspiring surf park developer like myself. You guys do surf park development consulting. What kind of consulting packages do you guys have? I mean, like how does that work? If somebody's in my shoes and we email you guys, where does it go from there?
Yeah, I think it depends. There's a huge range of people that we've had to talk to. Some people are sophisticated developers, or they already own an existing attraction and want to know how a wave or surf technology can complement their existing attraction. So it depends on who the audience is, but I think typically you want to help them through the first parts of the process, which is land, site selection, what kind of property you're looking into the utilities that are available at that site, some of the land use constraints. And then from there, putting together some kind of conceptual plan that, hey, we understanding what the client's vision is, and then maybe help visualize that for them and put a business plan together for what does it cost to build that, and how does the expense, the CapEx that you're spending generate revenue, and how much does that cost to operate from a staffing perspective. So, and our team has that sort of duality of being a real estate developer and an operations team to be able to put that sort of package together. And that comes in different ranges, so that's maybe from the beginning. And then if you're already in an existing park, we can help people to train them on water safety and sort of maybe the cultural aspects of surfing, at least from the Hawaii perspective. We can pretty much help at any stage of the project, and it's fun for us.
Cool. And you mentioned feasibility studies, and I think, John, you even mentioned economic impact. Okay, I mean, you guys help with all of that?
Yeah, we've outsourced it as well, but those are tools that you need as going through the process. Depending on your financing strategy, I mean, those are great tools to have in your pocket that typically cost money. But I think, that early on, I think for the majority of people who have the idea of wanting to start a surf development and don't have any background in real estate development, it's typically just refining their vision, helping them come up with a budget so they know how much money they theoretically need to raise and what the returns would be theoretically, and a timeline so that they can then go have talked with investors. The feasibility study becomes a little bit more thorough, because typically that's maybe geared at a bank, and they're going to have a million questions on water safety, water sanitation. Basically you want to have a Bible that tells you everything that you need to do, and you can point to and say, when the bank asks you the question, hey, it's in our feasibility study, with comparisons to other projects and other technologies. And so yeah, I mean, there's a variety of consulting packages out there, but typically we just like to understand, what the vision is, where the person's at, how we help them best as part of the team. If they need us to do everything we can, if they need us to just play a small supporting role, we're always happy to do that as well.
Cool. And with the surf park industry being so new, I mean, how do you really do a good feasibility study, with only, a handful of operating parks, and maybe you don't have access to their numbers? I mean, how do you really perform a solid feasibility study that a bank is going to say, okay, it looks like you've covered all the bases? And I mean, what kind of metrics do you use? How do you really do that without having the insider knowledge that, of what's going on behind the scenes at, let's say, BSR?
Yeah, I mean, there's companies that specialize in just doing feasibility studies for operational businesses, like, let's say, a water park, and they have a lot of data to reference. But when you break down, I mean, I think our feasibility specifically, John can maybe speak to this, but the feasibility studies we did in 2012 versus a feasibility study that we do in 2020 are not too different, but there is better data now out there. I mean, there's tighter comparisons.
Cool.
But
I think by outsourcing the feasibility study, it made it a little easier for them to talk to other surf park developers and get more information than we might be viewed as a competitor and so forth.
Right.
And those studies, I would say, average between $30,000 and $40,000 for a feasibility marketing study, and they look at other attractions in the area, your pricing, where that fits into the mix, and just tourism statistics, and just a lot of information that an investor would need to know in terms of, can this project work? Can it make money?
Yeah, and that feasibility is so important for surf park development.
Well,
So,
it's just an independent review too.
oh, true. Yeah, it can't be done by me, right?
Right.
Yeah, and right now I've been the one doing like feasibility and pro forma and all that kind of stuff. And so I definitely have to get somebody to come, the third party, come back and say, yeah, these assumptions are, pretty close, and verify that kind of stuff. So that's something that I'm definitely going to have to do. Um, Also, I need to decide upon a wave technology. I've kind of based my concept around Waveguard, but there's so many new ones popping up. What do you guys suggest a developer should do in terms, or look for in terms of choosing a wave technology provider?
Try all of them.
Try all of them.
Personally, try all of them. I mean, that was one of the reasons we went with Waveguard. Is Brian Keolana went to the Waveguard facility in Spain, and he wanted to see if it was real, what he was experiencing. And they had the whole lineup of surfboards there for him to, choose any one you want. He said, no, I want to body surf it, because that's the true form of surfing. I don't want a piece of wood in between the wave. And Keno was there with him, and he probably describes it best. But I mean, when he got into the wave, he was yelling like a kid, like screaming. So I mean, that convinced us, in that the wave was real, and you're right. New technologies have, I guess, progressed. They've always all been around, the technologies, but we feel now with this Cove technology, it gives us even more variability in the wave, and allows more people to flow through the traction, and both beginners and experts on the same kind of wavelength. And so I'd put a strong endorsement for Waveguard. But yes, sure, there are other technologies that have popped up, and they're all very exciting. They all have proponents and opponents. So.
Right. Are you guys using Waveguard in your facility in Hawaii?
Yes, we are.
Okay. You guys have like an exclusivity with those guys? I mean, like, are you able to work with other wave park developer or technology?
We're able to work with others. We have no exclusivity agreement with them. We're just a fan.
Gotcha. Cool.
And we surfed it, so
right.
I think there's another one like with this big plunger in Australia that's
Surf Lakes
being developed, and Surf Lakes. Yeah, that looks interesting. I think our site in Hawaii doesn't have enough depth in terms of to accommodate something like that. So, but it looked, and philosophically, that company is aligned with what our visions are in terms of providing a safe surf experience. But that the Waco American Wave Machine has a real, I guess, section for experts that I think is very appealing. But it has its downfalls, I'm sure, as well. But they're all good. They're all good. So.
Yeah.
How did you find Waveguard?
Probably the same way you guys saw. Saw a video of them like a long time ago. With that perfect peeling wave that they put out, and I was like, wow, I really want one of those in my backyard. That was actually before I moved to Charlotte. I think when I first saw that, and then I moved to Charlotte, and I was like, I started, because I'm from Charleston, which is on the east coast of America, and so I grew up surfing, and moved to Charlotte. I missed the water, and I was like, I got to bring waves to me now, and so that's what kind of put me on this path. And so I've been paying attention to the wave technology space ever since. And when I saw the Cove, I was like, now they're getting somewhere. Because I mean, like one of the problems with their old technology was you didn't have enough throughput. You know, you couldn't put enough people on the waves to make it really financially viable. At least I couldn't put the numbers together. But then once the Cove came out, you know, it definitely seems much more viable now.
Yeah, definitely. I think they all have great solutions for different developments, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. You know, if you're running a standalone surf park, then, you know, one technology might make more sense than the other. But I mean, capital is part of that equation, land size, you know, power availability. I mean, the Kelly Slater wave is amazing. I'd love to surf one of those and have access, and their business model seems to be working. You know, they're booked out a couple months in advance, and but I'm sure their technology will evolve as well, and that'll be exciting to see.
Yeah, for sure. You just mentioned capital. Do you guys help with finding funding for surf parks?
We can. It's typically, I think the part that we help out with is just refining what a developer wants to accomplish, and how to make that business plan look and feel as tangible and safe as possible, and reduce risks in all the areas. So typically, I think most people, if they are in the stage that you're at, they're already have had conversations or had an idea of who they could get the money from. And so we end up just sort of helping them to prepare to have those conversations, or because it is an early stage game. So, capital and access to capital is, pretty challenging. But even putting, it's real estate development, so it takes money to make money. And there's a lot of effort that goes and money that gets spent just to being able to put, get a shovel ready project together and then finance it.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm finding there's so much that goes into it. Like I said, in earlier on, it's not just a business. You're like creating something out of just a piece of land, and it's a challenging process. So it's good to see companies like Honokea out there that can help aspiring surf park developers, create a vision and get that to the finish line.
Yeah, I mean, I think real estate development is super challenging, even if you're just building something as simple as a multi-family development. You start adding, complex pools and attractions, and financing can get very challenging, or very creative, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that the financing part of it is the biggest challenge, or what are some other challenges with surf park development?
It's the hardest part to me. It's the hardest part, particularly since it's such a new industry.
Yeah.
You've got to have someone that loves surfing and willing to take a big risk, but big rewards too. So.
Yeah. What is your take on the kind of build it and they will come philosophy of like the Surf Ranch in Waco, where you're kind of building a surf park out in the middle of nowhere, versus the way Virginia Beach, where it's like, right in the middle of an urban area? Like, which philosophy do you think is better, I guess?
I think that's just the growing stages of implementing this as a tool, as an amenity for real estate development. It was, Waco was an existing attraction that it was pretty cheap to put in a wave pool there. If you had to put one of that same pool into the heart of Dallas, the capital expenditure is a lot higher, and you got to put, complicated filtration systems in, and the land costs more, et cetera, et cetera. same thing in Lemoore. I mean, that's a existing ski park that they turned, that they're able to use the sort of entitlements for to put in the wave pool. So I think those are opportunistic developments, and I think developments like the Virginia Beach project and your project, these are the tertiary developments that are, the one from test facilities to now commercial operations, and prime or, non-prime locations to now we'll have, these will be, high profile developments at some point. If the financials can work, I mean, that comes down to, again, your site selection and, the cost of the land.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you guys had some questions for me about my development, and talking about, how we can work together on groundswell. So, feel free to ask, whatever information you need.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess, one of the questions is, do you have, where are you at with your development, and how's it going for you on, sorry, we didn't do my research on your project. I wish I'd done I've looked at your website, and it looks wonderful. But if you just get us up to speed on where you're at.
Yeah. So I've obviously got the vision out, out there. And I've got a pretty solid business plan from my perspective, as well as pro forma, for the entire project, and not just the surf park development, but, for the commercial space and residential as well. So I've put some significant effort and time into developing all that. And right now, I'm really looking at, getting the funding part of it. And I'm in conversations with a couple different entities, somebody who might want to come in as a capital partner to help fund and get it started. I haven't been able to get through an extensive conversation with him about that. But we've been, playing some phone tag, and that conversation will happen. And then I've got a couple different, debt brokers, who are interested as well. And they just want to see me line up a couple different things, which is one reason why I'm talking to you guys. Since I haven't done a surf park development, and I haven't done real estate development either. My background is in real estate. I've been doing real estate for a long time, but I've just never put my hands into doing a real estate development. But I've put ample research into it to really understand. But I don't have that under my belt, and so so especially one debt broker, he said, get hooked up with somebody who's done it before. One, and then two, get the capital, and then we'll talk. So that's the stage that I'm at right now, is just lining up my team that I can demonstrate to investors and other people or companies that might be able to fund it, and say, this is my team, we're going to make it, and we're going to get this across the finish line. We just need the money. And so that's where I'm at right now, is putting the final team members into place. I've got an architect, or I've got a couple of architects that are interested, actually. And then I've got a local builder. I know that we end up doing an RFP at some point. But I've got a builder lined up. Got a couple of sites identified, but I haven't secured them, because I want to make sure I've got everything else in place first. So I've got a couple sites identified, and that's pretty much where I'm at.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. I think where we would be useful is, and it could be in a couple areas, right? We could help you with, reviewing the sites that you've selected, and maybe help, one of the sites locations is better for financing or not. An example here is, we're in an opportunity zone for our site on Oahu. And so that was a strategic selection that is connected to a financing plan or a capital stack. But yeah, if there's getting access to debt and for projects like this is a challenge. And so part of your site selection can include looking at, federal funding programs that are there that can reduce the risk for the bank. There's SBA and USDA programs as two examples. And then I think, those conversations with investors, prepping the package for that, you have, a credible team that's got some experience. Another thing that we help people with in this early stage is just, we can be that on paper fee developer that manages the project for a fee of a percentage of the total project cost. And we could be an outsourced operator, at least early on to, give the bank a sense that there's a group to operate the facility in a professional sense and mitigate some of the risk. I mean, I think that's the game that we're in this stage of, and John, I'm sure you got more to say here, but risk mitigation is the name of the game. That's what, you're and every developer is always trying to do, is how do we structure partnerships? How do we do things to make the risk less for investors and for the bank and for ourselves.
And what will the bank and investors, like, what are the biggest risks that they're like really looking at and focused on?
Well, I mean, they're always going to look at it from a downside perspective. So they're going to want to know what kind of collateral there would be if the loan gets defaulted on, and who they get to, if there's personal guarantees on the loans, what investor wants to, is there an investor with assets that is willing to do that? Yeah, I mean, they're always going to look at it from the downside perspective. And, typically I think in the real estate development world, if I'm just to generalize, everyone wants to see it successful in 10 different places. And I think the challenge with that, when you're looking at like innovative products like the one you're working on, is that, you're taking maybe components of other projects that have been successful and putting them together, but they've never been put together in this area ever before. And so that's the uphill battle that is consistently faced with like a debt product is, show me where this has been done before. Well, it hasn't. Okay, well, show me the closest thing that you can. But development cycle is long, right? So if we say that we want to wait for there to be 10 successful projects in, cities the same size as your city, I mean, that might take another 10 years, and by the time you're thinking about that, or maybe by the time we're there, it's like society doesn't want to use a facility like this, or is it better technology, or, that is, I think, the challenge of the era is financing the projects like John is saying. I mean, it does take some creativity and I think the right partnerships.
Yeah, and you mentioned some ways that you can mitigate the risk, the banks being like USDA and what was SBA. Are there any other ways to mitigate the risk?
I mean, I just think in your site selection, I think that's the benefit, I think, of having a strong finance partner on your team is that, there's some geographic, there's different tax benefits, but I mean, to me, the creativity in the finance element is really, I think, what some people are better at than others. And yeah, I mean, there's new market tax credits. There's, you could incorporate low income housing into a project if you have, if there's tax reasons for that. Some people look at building a giant hotel, right? Some people are going down this realm of like, well, we can finance a hotel, a 200 key hotel, 300 key hotel, and we'll use the wave pool as an amenity and we can show it as a loss leader. It doesn't even need to be profitable, versus maybe what you're starting off with would be a but that would be the equivalent of financing your whole, 3-phase project all at once versus, doing the first phase as maybe an operational attraction. So it just depends on, I think, where your heart's at a little bit. And then I think, the chances of putting financing together and surprisingly, sometimes, it seems like sometimes it's easier to raise, more money than less. And maybe sometimes it's the opposite, but yeah, I mean, some surf park developers are doing just that, right? I mean, they're talking about $300 or $400 million for their project, and some people are talking about $20 million. And you can't say one's harder or easier. It just depends on the team and the strategy you have.
Yeah,
it's all hard.
Right. Is putting all the risk mitigation, is that something that you guys, do you guys just focus on the design and the concept aspect of it, or do you also help with kind of saying, oh, well, you can do this with your capital stack? And do you help with that too, or?
So I think any team that we want to be a part of, we want to see them successful. So, that's, I think that's where we're always going to come from, but it just depends on, I think, the element or the involvement that we have. It just depends what people need help with. But yeah, risk reduction is a key part of, I think, any development team. Like, they have to be thinking about cost reductions, schedule risk, political risk, public relations risk, entitlements risk, utilities risk, if there's buying technology from a foreign entity, right? Like Waveguard, foreign exchange risk, right? There might be some FX that you got to model. So, I think that's something that you're always trying to, and then when you're communicating to other people, at least our perspective, you always want to make it sound worse than it might be, so we're always trying to give it to people up front that, hey, here's all the things that can go wrong. I don't think in any of our feasibility studies we've ever anticipated a pandemic. But we've had to cover things like, we're in Coachella, we are close to the San Andreas Fault. So, what happens in that scenario where there's an earthquake, and what does that mean to the construction of this project that would be maybe different from a project in Charleston, where you don't maybe have to worry about earthquakes, but maybe we got to think about hurricanes and, what happens if someone gets hurt, how does that work from a PR perspective, from an operations perspective, from a liability perspective. So I think, and most season, the attractions world, the water park industry is really sophisticated and very established, and they're really good at what they do. And, we work intimately with that industry. Well, one of our partners, in fact, manages a water park and has for a long time. And so, that's a professional skill set in and of itself, I think. Similar to, I think, people spend their whole careers being architectural planners, like our partner, Steve. All he thinks about is, where do we put, the retail relative to the food, or where does the hotel go? How's the customer experience for when you park your car? The details that these consultants have to think about or these specialists think about is amazing. But I think it's just putting that together and in a, that's what development is, right? It's just building a wonderful team.
Yeah, and that's what I've been really focused on recently, is making sure I've got all my team members, ready to go, and whenever I can get the funding. On that note, what are the key partners besides a company like yourself, besides obviously a capital partner, architect, engineer, water quality and safety? It is are there any other partners that you really need to focus on to put on your team? Marketing, what else is there?
Up front, I think it's I think it's finance, putting together a valid plan for your site, you know, so finding a site that makes sense and making sure that, so I think a planner from a architecture firm is good. I don't think you need that much design work in the beginning, to be honest. I think it's more about just general lump sums of square footage, right? We want this much retail, we want this much food and beverage, we want this much whatever, and putting a cost to that and modeling some revenue, kind of the back of the napkin stuff. But you'll want, when you get to a specific site, to compare the sites, you got to look at, a civil engineer is useful. And then it's always nice to have someone to be able to validate the budgets when you can get to some tangible amounts of construction, so it's sort of a design spiral. To me, it's really similar to designing a ship. It's like, you start off thinking the ship's going to be like this, and then you want it to go a little faster. So the engines get bigger, which makes the boat heavier, which means you got to build the boat a little bigger. And, it's this kind of evolution, but I think that spiral can go pretty quick in the beginning. And then you typically just get held up by financing and getting to the next step. And sometimes, people have that money. They're a business that they're already a developer. They have investments in sort of operational real estate. And sometimes you got to find all the money yourself, and it's doable.
Yeah.
I'd say I'd vote for a good accountant.
Lawyer. A good lawyer is really important.
Legal and insurance company that could help you evaluate the risks involved of your particular project. I think is important.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, guys, I want to be respectful of your time. I mean, we've been on for a long time, longer than I expected, but I've enjoyed talking with you guys. And I mean, I've just got 2 more questions, but if you guys want to ask me anything about my development, we can still go on a little bit longer if you want.
Yeah, maybe we could follow up offline if you do need help. I mean, we're happy to help and ask questions and in a non-public forum, and if that works for you. But John, you got anything for him?
No, I don't have any right now.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll just wrap up with a couple more questions. What are your last bits of advice for a surf park developer?
I think, gosh, I've been at this for 10 years. I think, and I can't point to a project that, is ours tangibly. So I think my biggest advice would just be don't give up. It's a fun world. You're going to learn a lot, but yeah, you just got to keep going.
I'd echo that. Yeah, is persistence and just trying to advance the development any way you can, little by little. It is a long process and frustrating at times, but I've found that the people met along this journey are very passionate about surfing, and it's in addition to passion, it also has great commercial viability, which is what's so exciting, that we could bring these opportunities, commercial opportunities, and then share surfing in the right way. So awesome. That's what my closing remarks.
Cool. Last question. What do you guys foresee to be the impact of surf parks on the surfing industry and the world at large?
Yeah, I mean, I think, surfing's history is beautiful and is inclusive, or can be really inclusive, and can be really great for community building and health and wellness. And, all kinds of great things. More surfing. I think in general, our country suffers from an obesity problem, and it's coming out right now during this pandemic that people aren't as healthy as we should be. And so I think it's an opportunity. It's a tool that can be used to inspire all kinds of really great attributes in society that, America needs right now and the world needs. And it's, the responsibility of the operator of these parks to share that.
Awesome. Well, Keno, Uncle John, I appreciate your time with us today. How can our listeners reach you guys?
Yeah, you can, find us on Instagram at Honokea, or our website is honokea.com, and we'll get back to you.
Cool. Awesome. Well, guys, I mean, it's clear that Honokea can help any aspiring surf park developer out there. And I encourage you guys to look them up, and together we can build surf parks all over the world. So with that, thanks again, guys, and we'll talk soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Surf's up.
Surf's up. Now, if you found this information helpful and you want to keep up to date on surf park developments, trends, and ideas, if you're an aspiring surf park developer, an investor, an artificial wave engineer, or whatever, please subscribe to my channel, give me a like, comment, share it, and together we can build barrels all over the world.